Wonderful. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here for the Winter 2023 Soiree from the SIGGRAPH Educators Committee. In session 3, we have Suzete and Andrzej are going to be sharing their work. And I think, Andrzej, we'll start with you. And after you're finished your short presentation, we'll have Suzete, and then we'll have some time for questions and discussion.
Okay, thank you for inviting us to this presentation, and good afternoon in East Coast, good morning on the West Coast. I will talk about a research that is also kind of contextualized a little bit in academia into embedded technology, physical computing, sensors in a context of smart building, smart environment. We are getting more and more accustomed to buildings that have a lot of smart devices. This could be fridges, stoves, and heating systems, and so on. But I think we don't really look as much into the idea of synergies that are those new devices and new kind of paradigm of smart and interactive environments bring to our life. And especially kind of synergies of what it means, like if you have two new things, the third new quality that can emerge. And before I talk about my own work, I would like to kind of maybe contextualize this with kind of analogy. If we have a traditional incandescent light bulb, and then our generation, was introduced LED bulb. Once you actually look what is inside the light bulb, you realize that the light factor, which is a small LEDs on the top of the light bulb, are only a small component of what is inside of those light bulbs. And this automatically asks questions, what else could be put in this part of the light bulb? Because you already are printing circuit boards, you already are adding components, sensors, actuators. And the question is how this can expand. And we know in a marketplace already that we have light bulbs with microwave sensors, which is a radar microwave that is motion-based sensor, the same way with a peer sensor that is visible on the top of the light bulb. Or even more interestingly, we have light bulbs that have colors, they have speakers, because some people feel that the position of light bulb within the room is similar to the position of the speaker, wants to be kind of evenly distributed within the space. So very quickly, those kind of devices have new kind of opportunities, new characteristics, new ways we are kind of considering what is the device that is a light bulb. And kind of along the same lines, we start thinking what it means when you start connecting those devices into broader systems. So this is an example of motion lights that not only trigger when the light is turned on, but they talk to each other, so they lit up the whole path of us walking through the garden, through the landscape, through the park. And again, this idea of synergy, I think, is very interesting here, because it's not only that the light reacts to where people are, it's not only that it talks to other lights, so all lights can illuminate the path, but also you start realizing that once you have this knowledge, you can even talk about the direction, not only how often this trigger happen, how often people happen in the path, room, or inside the building, but also the direction of traffic, because you can technically see the sequence of triggering of those different lights, even if all of them are on at the same time because are impacted by the one light, you can see that each of the sensor can report further. So this kind of talks to a number of research questions. What does it mean to kind of interconnect building components? What new features things can emerge out of things we have? So it's not necessarily have to add a new component, but how do you use knowledge and abilities of existing elements to create yet new features, new possibilities for the buildings? Maybe this connects to the BIM and so-called digital twins that create a virtual companion for the physical assets and monitoring the conditions, performance, users. I think these are kind of interesting questions, and this kind of sways to my proposal a number of research projects, and one of them is looking if we have a smoke detector that locally beeps. We know that now you can have smoke detectors that do connect throughout the house without wires, and because we already had wire before, and they can inform each other so people in other part of the building may know that there's an emergency, possible emergency. But again, the question of smoke detector coming and doing the initiating, it is important, but from the point of view of first responders, the idea of having maybe a sensor like we see here, the motion sensor, is more important to know not only where the smoke is, but where the people are within those rooms that have smoke or the fire. So it's kind of thinking about broader picture of how this impacts life safety of buildings. And again, the idea is that we want to kind of facilitate first responders, but also we want to know where people are in a case of emergency. There was a lot of examples from in New York from Sandy hurricane that people were stuck, elderly people were stuck on the upper floors of high-rise building, and there were no way to communicate and even know who is left in the building unless you go and try to now knock to all the doors and try to see if any elderly people or any people are in need of help. So at some point teaching AR and doing research on these topics, I kind of came across the very old, this is maybe 12-year-old application or 15, for a kind of connecting the building information assets within with AR. So when the first responders, this was a British application, when first responders come to the building, they actually may know where the locations are, where the CME's connections, where the egress stairs, again, so they have more informed kind of rescue plan. And so I kind of started working on these things, and also working with sensors within the building. I kind of started tracking occupancies. This is from my office, actually. You can see I'm working mostly Monday through Thursday from the office, rest of the time from home. And you can see pretty active hours. So start kind of understanding for the future use of the machine learning and predictive abilities to understand how you can predict possibility of different people being at a different time of the week. And this is actually, you can see a diagram of 24 hours by 7 days of the week. And this is one of the projects we work on, which kind of combines this is actually my school building, and this test was done with developing sensors, actuators, and kind of connecting to databases. And this was to kind of monitor both temperature, occupancy paths, and then was developed to different kind of web interfaces that allowed for kind of either user interface or interface for first responders to inform them on condition of the building in case of emergency. There's some more differences. On the left, you can see the idea that people could start using the building navigation options to understand not only where to, where they are in the building, but also how to escape the building, which seems like an obvious question, but actually research shows the opposite. Research shows that people hardly ever go to the best egress route. People always try generally to go back to the route they came into the building. That's kind of 70-80% of people try to do, even if they have better routes, or even if the route back to the entrance of the building is it's more dangerous than actually other alternatives. So in this case, you can kind of see how, let me just start video. We're experimenting with this kind of combination, not only web-based, not only sensors, but actually displaying this, let me show you here, with initially the ultimate plan is to have some kind of VR component with it, like nav mesh navigation that we have in Unity, but right now we just had a number of pre-recorded videos that would show people with a phone how to interact. Let me just go next slide. How did we do this? This was done with the with the Arduino-like microcontroller ESP8266 with number of sensors, temperature, motion sensors, and they were interconnected through Wi-Fi and to databases. We kind of look at coverage for different types of rooms to make sure we have a full coverage of the rooms. And this is roughly the kind of pipeline of how this was achieved. So again, we have microcontrollers that more sense than actuate, but then they send to the database. And in this case, the web application is something that serves as a kind of information or actuation part and use a number of different things like MySQL to get kind of process going. Another example was less software-based, was still software-based, but we looked at the physical actual manifestations within the building to help, because it's not always you can hold the phone or have all these things available. So this developed a number of very similar setup of modules using the same ESP8266, but just a second, but it was kind of focused on developing all other attributes of the building, like maybe color illuminated. Here we can see a push bar on the building's emergency or emergency egress signs with the directions and lights, so people actually can be kind of reminded, okay, this is the better emergency egress versus not. This is connected to sensors, understanding the temperatures, in this case, on the door as well. So kind of people can access outside much easier. Just see, sorry, the light just came in. So just kind of finish this brief presentation. There's a couple of things I want to continue working. Right now I'm working on predictive modelability. So you can see this again, print out of MySQL, but actually start using this as a way to kind of further advance ideas about the understanding where people could be at that time of the building, in addition to sensors showing in, because sensors may often show if there's no power and so on, may show the past data. And space occupancy versus occupant load. And right now, this talks about if the room is occupied, does not know how many people are. So this it's the next question that may actually be connected to the fourth point, tracking of occupants, and as well as building navigation. If the people are in the progress of moving, the occupancy map is changing actively because people may be in different parts of the building at some point. So that's pretty much it. I'll be happy to answer questions, and I should probably stop sharing. Sorry,
I
have these. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Perfectly. Well, it's a perfect segue for Suzete to begin her presentation. So go ahead, Suzete.
Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Suzete Venturelli. I'm professor at University Anhembi, Morumbi, and the University of Brasília. What I'm going to show is the result of works carried out in disciplines and research in art, design, and technology by some postgraduate groups in Brazil, which have the support of the National Council of Research and Development of the Ministry of Science and Technology. The results were presented post-pandemic on art in 2022. The exhibit discussed that during a pandemic and under the aegis of a far-right, genocidal and denominator government, groups resisted and expressed their thoughts in activist movement to fight fascists in Brazil. The works that were elaborated in the year 2022 in the university and were exhibited in the National Museum of the Republic, Brasília, in the international event of art and technology. More than 40,000 spectators visited the exhibition. This is the museum building by Oscar Niemeyer. Oops. Go. Okay. The first work that I show you, the name is Reforestation Now by Teófilo Silva and me. Almost all the green is gone. Now it's time to reforest our land, Brazil. Reforestation in our country is urgent. Teófilo lives and works in Macapá, in the state of Pará. He always photographs the devastation in the Amazon. Art can denounce what is happening in the Amazon. Art can participate in political manifestation. The second work is Blending Heart Plant by Marília Bergamo. She is a professor in Australia now. Blending Heart Plant is a robotic assembly. The assemblage remains the organic concept of symbiosis and align into the machinery of joint work, resulting in the deconstruction of the idea of totality of the organism. Musgo. Musgo by Arthur Cabral. Musgo is a hybrid organism between machine, plant, and humans. In it, multiple beings will work together to allow the survival and balance of a new ecosystem. Permitted by a colony of mousses and a computer system, the light installation interacts with the public and the exhibition space through sensors and actuators. A system that resembles a permanent immersion bioreactor and surrounded by artificial light-emitting roots composed of semi-translucent plastic tubes filled with LEDs. Through customized software, the system captures the sound of the exhibition space, processes his sound, records and uses it to produce a response to the environment. The roots that make up the organism propagate light in the form of waves, where the intensity is governed by the relationship between the sound captured in space and the biodata coming from the mouse colonies. This hybrid organism considers the organic and the systemic character of the triadic relation between plants, machines, and humans. HIFA is another work by Águida de Carvalho. Is human plus interface plus fungi plus accessory. In this post-pandemic context, the reflections of the exponential growth of technology and the exacerbation of connectivity are phenomena that impact the roles of sociability and sustainability. We experience an awakening of a critical awareness of the change in the perception of tactile, sound, and visual sensory attributes with the resumption and transformation in hybrid social relationships, face-to-face and remote. The HIFA project is a wearable that appears to reflect how we were entangled in the digital daily life, and now we are looking for a social reorganizational and a new approximation and adjustment in experiences. The proposition emerged from studies of biology and biodesign to investigate the surfaces and the relationships between systems and their complexity. The last work is Samsara by Linkaroni. Samsara is a visual art result of a theoretical, practical journey and the discussion raised in the process of its elaboration. The methodology is anchored to the concept of site-specificity art with greater precision, site orientation, and in cartography to map concepts, based on the specificity of place as a proper-line agent for reflections and transformations. The physical space in its film recorded against a dynamic in new temporal and discursive dimension in virtual reality. Computational resources allow us to recreate other realities and reveal both a personal desire and a critical vision for the observed situation. Autopoiesis is in the ability of beings to produce themselves, similarly to what happens in the artist's creative process. Through this artistic process, use of technological devices make it possible to give life to virtuality and obtain displacement in time-space. As a result, it makes us reflect on the concept of samsara in Sanskrit, wandering, flowing, passing, or the repeating cycle of birth, life, and death, past, present, and future, and notice the contrast between the death provoked by environmental impacts versus the ritualistic that death receives in nature itself. If Buddhism helps to understand these cycles, also as a way of transforming mental states and personal consciousness, is it possible through art to summon empathy and alterity in the construction of places others? I'm finished, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Excuse me about my English.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Suzete, for this project, were the artists prior to this already working with these technologies, or was the use of technologies in their designs something new that was prompted by this this project itself?
Well, for the methodology for teaching, we use the language of programming, P5GS, I don't know, you know.
Okay.
Java, okay. Yacht, 2, Arduino, and we developed the robot like Musgo, Moss, you know, I show. Okay, and we use 2 software for animation. We use everything we can for creativity and AI too. Now we utilize the données. We study very, very much. The students too. We have the laboratory for develop this. And now we are very happy because Lula is notre president. The president now in Brazil, we think this all changed for a future, a best future for the education and the people in the forest, the people, the poor people. Lula, viva Rejane! Rejane Spitz is a very artist. I like it so much. Thank you, Rejane.
Excellent, thank you. And so, Andrzej, I think that you had mentioned some future directions for your work, and one thing that I was intrigued by is the idea of being able to map where the population of a building is in that moment, in any given moment. It dawned on me during that, I was, a lot of the devices that we wear today are monitoring some of our vital statistics and could tie into the level of stress or distress that folks are in. Do you see that as a potential direction for first responders to?
I definitely think it is, but we have to step back a little bit, because the question is, what is the greater good for the society? Do we want to know where people are all the time or not? And parents would answer questions, I want to know where my kids are. Kids would answer, I don't know. I always want my parents to know where I am. So I think we have to still in a process where we don't know what are all benefits and all the kind of drawbacks for, on one hand, having a full under control of people where they are versus what the benefits. So generally, I would say yes. People are already tracked, but that's not an excuse to track them more, because the fact that the phone company knows where you are is different than the building owner, or maybe your employer knows where you are, because they can see how much time you spend at the coffee cooler versus water cooler versus in a bathroom versus different places, may start seeing who you talk to and so on. So there's a number of things that would have to be figured out. But from the point of view of effectiveness of first responders, and I kind of focus on fire, but we do have gunmen on a campus and a lot of different situations, and understanding where people are and how they can be helped, and where to focus your efforts. I think it's a very important part. So we are kind of looking a little bit on this part, and the question is this being tracked by people wearing devices like a phone, which is a little bit of using their own part, and we don't know if it's consensual or not consensual, or is the building using either right now motion sensors are not really distinguishing between people, they just know somebody is there, versus if you have a face tracking, then you can actually, the question is open, do we just first focus on some people, rescuing? So there's a lot of questions that will have to be sorted. But generally, I think ability to know where to focus your effort and where to even focus your, extinguishers or water streams in case of fire, I think it's a noble and good approach. You just have to understand how this has to be implemented, so there's no unintended social consequences to this. So it's kind of my feeling, yes. And I think most people would agree with this approach.
Agreed. I mean, as I voiced the question, I was realizing too that a potential side effect is if, for example, a battery-based device was responsible for reporting that, if somebody's battery just was too drained that day, they could be in distress and simply missed because, well, their device isn't reporting anything. So, they could, versus a traditional, door to door routine for the.
A lot of technologies, the same way like we had to change phones at some point, so we could do 911 call, and they would know where we are where we are at the point. And remember, like maybe 2004 or 5, I don't remember the date exactly. You couldn't put an old phone into the new SIM to an old phone because they said those phones are no longer support 911 calls, emergency calls. So in this case, there was a transition. In part, there's a lot of technology looking into the fact that a phone died. It didn't die, it still works for half an hour, an hour. It's just no longer useful for you. It's a beacon that can transmit your location with a very low amount of battery and very small energy. So it's like last 2% is saved, not for you to have another 10-minute call or look at Instagram for another 2 minutes, but actually, so there's a lot of those kind of real emergency equipment. They have the kind of beacon sense at the end, and this is also true for a lot of battery backup components within the building. So there are some kind of ideas. Plus, there's a whole new language, because there's interest of I read about these things. So this whole new language of last will and what happens if your device gets no longer response. What system does. This is a whole idea thinking within smart buildings. What do we do? Like in our case, when we were hit by Sandy in New York area, the all doors open that are normally controlled. And this is the decision you made as a designer. Is it no power? Do the door open or not? To the bank, if there's night, probably shouldn't open. But in general, we want to make sure that people can egress, right? So they don't lock. So there's a lot of mechanisms that are built in on a different level, either physically or electronically, they could do. But in your case is the idea of beaconing, but also, yes, some other ways to do.
Thanks. So I'll go back to Suzete. And in the course of combining these technologies with design, did you find anything that transpired surprising, something that you did not expect to happen?
I think the surprise, yes, because the people work together for the work is constructed together. The methodology is serendipity methodology. When the thing is changed, we sleep in the laboratory and another day we have an idea. But I think the most important to me is activist art that is political. Art can denounce the abuses of a criminal organization that invaded the Amazon, and they are helping children, destroying everything, and polluting rivers with mercury. It's very horrible today because of a criminal meaning. Education is also a means of denunciation and to prevent all of these. As we are seeing with Yanomamis and the homeless people on the street. Okay. And I think today it's the more important that we change the society with technology, with art and science together. And then the emergence arrived because it's very, very heavy for change the world.
Do you think this approach of combining technology with design creates a new opportunity for this voice to be heard?
Yes. We can. We have. We dominate the media. We know the media. We know how can communicate it about this technology in the university. Donc, and we go to the streets every time, in the museum, in the street, in the university. It's very work, so much work. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Andrzej, how about you? Is there any particular surprising outcome that you didn't anticipate happening in the pursuit of this?
Yeah, yes, that's right. Later I can maybe ask questions for Suzete about public art, because I think it's some new things could happen with VR and AR. But for surprising, I think it's it's interesting how you kind of learn about the synergies between different components. You have it and you realize I don't need to do much more to have something else, right? In a normal world, if you need to build extra room, you put extra room, but you have to build it. In this case, you start thinking, what else, how else can I use what I already have? So it's kind of thinking through the opportunity, kind of the economy of resources you have, and start realizing that those things can achieve much more than what we have. And even looking at data, you start realizing that I have a very strong pattern when I go to take a lunch, or when I go to after class, quickly disappear always to do maybe some food. So it's kind of, you discover when you look at data yourself. So I think it's sort of discovers both the data-wise and kind of electronic. But if I can maybe ask questions to Suzete, because I do believe that art and things can be activism and political. But I think my big thing in this arena is to actually, how do we broaden the authorship? Because I don't think it's just artists should be speaking for their mind. So like AR, and there's a lot of applications where people can put virtual graffitis and comment, and there's a history of commenting and evolving on things. How can we make those artistic contribution of let everybody to be an author of this? So it's kind of voice of everybody and expression of everybody. And those kind of, I think, are very interesting, because while we want to, we may have an idea how things should be, I think if everybody has an opportunity to contribute to the art and contribute to the topics, I think it's a next level of empowering people through those kind of authorships. So maybe if Suzete, did you ever work on something that was authored by the actually people who consume the art, in a sense, consume in a positive sense?
Okay, consume the art.
Yeah, well, people who actually are, because you often have situations when the artist and the recipient, but are recipients co-authoring the art, because then it's really, if in a case, especially in the case of activism and political statements, it's really a broader, constituency.
Okay. Yes, I think we have a position political. Art is to gather society for change the society. I think that it's my position, and we have another way too, when we can show the art in the museum for the people, and we can have a consciousness together, and through the education too. I don't know, education, art, science, technology. We didn't make an object finish. It's everything changed. It's not a finished thing. It's a work in progress. I think it's a definition. Rejane Spitz, my question is similar.
So as a work in progress, have you begun to look at ways that more people can participate in the creation of this art?
Yes. We have so much work when the people participated for the art. In the street, together in the laboratory. The laboratory is open for the people. Secondary school too. Mm-hmm. We have the methodology is we don't work only. We work together with the other student, the other professor. It's the position. We have the collaborative group. My English is very bad.
No, this is wonderful. I'll also share too that we actually have a question for you, Suzete, that was entered in the chat.
Yes.
Rejane says, how can you empower students through art and science? How do you engage students into activism?
We engage the people in the discipline when I teach, engage the people about the discussion, political discussion, and we can open the laboratory for the other students, that science, mechatronics, biology, and the people come when we work together, because the education, the connaissance is very complex today. Then we only can work together with other people, like students and professors. And we have prime. When we have a prime, we can money, and the people work together too. It's important the money too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. We actually have a little bit of an opportunity here. I'll say personally, I'm going to wind up our session. So again, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it both.